Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I used to joke that the only reason Natalie married me was because I can find things. Keys, receipts, the missing sneaker that somehow rolled under the boiler, a warranty buried in an email from 6 Junes ago. It's a dumb skill, the family bloodhound, and it made me feel useful in the everyday. The day before her trip, it made me wish I'd never learned to look. She called it a business trip the way people call a new haircut just a trim. Casual, no big deal, a little upbeat note at the end of the sentence. Europe for 8 days, starting in Paris, then Barcelona, then maybe Rome if the meetings panned out. She said it like she couldn't believe her luck, like a girl got handed a golden ticket and wasn't sure if she should punch it. We're not people who travel for work. I'm a project manager for a home renovation company. My days are estimates, suppliers, and impossible schedules. Natalie's a marketing director for a mid-size software firm with an office over a yoga studio. Conferences for her usually mean Minneapolis in March. Europe? Since when? I asked when she told me. New expansion, she said, eyes dancing with that excitement I love and fear in equal measure. I'll be in and out. Honestly, it's more donor dinners and brand storytelling than actual negotiations. I'll bring chocolate. Our daughter, Emma, rolled her eyes from behind her phone without looking up. She's 15 and can roll her eyes without activating any other part of her face. Our son, Miles, is 12, still believing in the necessary magic of snacks, and asked if she'd bring French Oreos. Natalie promised both chocolates and Oreos. I said, send pictures, because that's what you say to your person when they go somewhere you won't. The night before the flight, we did the ritual. Suitcase on the bed. Clothes rolled instead of folded because TikTok and because she wants to believe everything has a trick. Toiletries in a bag we bought when Emma was a toddler and Natalie declared us carry-on people like a creed. The house hummed with ordinary. The dog snored. Miles burned a grilled cheese by looking at it fondly instead of turning it. Emma asked me to sign a permission slip and pretended not to care if I did. Natalie's passport was supposed to be in the top dresser drawer, inside a smaller zippered pouch with a few euros from our honeymoon and a joke lottery ticket from a friend. It wasn't there. It'll turn up, I said, because that is the gravitational force of fathers. She didn't answer. She opened another drawer, then another, then the closet safe. The air in our room got tight. I did my thing. I checked where a passport would slide if it were in a hurry, under the dresser, between the mattress and the wall, the gap between the nightstand and the bed where pennies go to die. Nothing. Her hands shook. She laughed, a thin sound. I put it back, she said, mostly to herself. I always put things back. We went downstairs and tore the living room apart like a crime scene. Couch cushions off. Pockets checked. The basket by the door dumped out, an archaeology of our last year, masks we pray we won't need, a baseball schedule, a grocery list with avocados? Question mark circled 3 times, an earring that wasn't anyone's we recognized. Check under, I said. I lay on the rug and pushed my arm into the dark underbelly of the couch where Cheetos dust goes when it wants to become a legend. My fingers found paper, a pencil, a Lego brick that belonged to the boy Miles used to be. Far back, my fingertips brushed something like plastic. Got something, I said. The familiar little thrill, a hunter's heart in a suburban body. I dragged out a slim navy booklet. There she is, I said out of habit, relief rising like a fever breaking, and then I looked. Natalie's photo. But under it, not her name. I blinked because that's a thing you do when your brain wants to rearrange letters. The name was not quite nonsense, wrapped around her face like a joke that forgot to end. Different last name. Different first. Same eyes. Same serious half-smile that DMV cameras demand. I turned it over. The gold crest stamped on the front, the microprint, the hologram. Real. A second passport. Nana would have said, 2 of something important means one of them is about to break. Natalie? I said. She was on the floor with the other cushions, hair in her face, hands full of nothing. She looked up and the color left her face so fast I watched it drain. I held it out the way you hand someone a relic or a bomb. Oh, she said, like a person seeing themselves in a photo they didn't remember taking. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. That's. What is this? I asked. I made my voice calm because I am better with calm. Panic makes me clumsy, and I was suddenly holding something that required steady hands. Business visa, she said, too quickly, the way kids say I was just looking. You have to do this sometimes, to speed things up. The company gets these handled through an agency. They made me do a different name because of data privacy. Marketing stuff. It's normal. It was not normal. But people tell themselves stories they need. And you trust the person you've been married to for 19 years because the alternative is a set of stairs you aren't sure you can climb. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. Okay. Weird, but okay. She laughed again, nervous. I know. Corporate nonsense. I'll put that back, carefully. She took it from my hand like it might bite. She slid it into her laptop sleeve and then, as if to distract us both, said, "Did we ever get those travel pillows?" We found her real passport in a tote bag she'd used to take Emma to the dentist. It was at the bottom under a book of crossword puzzles and a pen without a cap. She kissed me almost giddy with relief and I pretended my heart had settled down because pretending is a form of love too. I would have forgotten about the second passport if not for the letter. It arrived the next morning, after I'd dropped Natalie at the airport, after I'd told her to text when she landed, after I'd told Miles I could handle the science fair trifold board without having a nervous breakdown. The letter was thin and official, the kind of paper you can hear when you thumb it. Addressed to a name that wasn't quite my wife's, at our home address. Postmarked Paris. I stood at the counter and looked at it, then at my kids and the dog in the cul-de-sac doing its like nothing is wrong routine, garbage truck, neighbor's sprinkler, a jogger in a neon hat, and then back at the letter. I opened it because sometimes gravity requires you to open things. The letterhead said Agents Rive Gauche. The French printed below might as well have been Greek. Halfway down, in thick bold font, something like facture, location. A bill. For an apartment in the 6th arrondissement. Dates that lined up frighteningly well with Natalie's supposed itinerary. And a signature at the bottom, written with the confidence of someone who has signed a lot of things, Antoine. The room did that shift again, that slow tilt like a painting that's been hanging crooked so long you think it's straight until someone levels it. I reread it, because that's what you do when you need the words to become friendlier. They didn't. I told myself a story. Natalie had gotten caught up in some half-legal corporate thing. The second passport was a shortcut. The Paris apartment was an Airbnb situation where they billed the agent, not the company. The signature belonged to a guy in accounting, tragically named like a movie character. Or, more cinematic, she had been pulled into something dangerous, a scam, a con. Better to believe in a con than to imagine your life was the con. I texted her, "Everything good? You on the plane?" 3 gray dots. Then, "Boarding now. Chaos at security. Love you. Tell Miles not to spray paint his volcano." I stared at her words and tried to feel if they weighed what they used to. By the time she landed, the story in my head had snowballed into a plan. "I'm coming," I said when she called from the taxi. "I found something. I think you're in trouble." "Ryan," she said, my name a Band-Aid. "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not," I stopped. "There's a letter. To your other name. For an apartment in Paris. Who is Antoine?" Silence, but not the good kind. "Then, we will talk when I can call. Please don't do whatever thing you're about to do. I'm safe." When we hung up, I booked a flight. It's not heroic when a middle-aged dad drops everything and flies to another continent, it's messy. I texted my boss. I called my neighbor to pick up Emma. I told Miles what I hoped were the right lies about where I was going and why. He reminded me to feed the dog before I left like I was the unreliable one. On the plane, I stared at the seatback map and watched the blue line creep over the ocean as if I could will it to go faster. The apartment was easy to find, Google is relentless, and the letters Rive Gauche did most of the work. A block from a bakery and an art supply store, the kind of street that makes you believe in Paris, whether you want to or not. The building had an old wooden door and a brass intercom nobody used. I didn't know how to get in. I leaned against the wall like a man trying not to be a burglar. A delivery guy came with a crate of flowers for someone's balcony. He held the door and I slipped in with American politeness. Fourth floor. A hallway that smelled like every hallway in Europe I remember from our honeymoon. Old wood, old air, new paint. The number from the bill. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, quieter this time, like maybe the quiet would make someone like me more. I listened. Nothing. The door had one of those glass panels with a curtain half drawn. I didn't look in. I told myself the only honest thing I could do was leave a note. I slid the bill under the door like an invitation to a party no one wanted. I should have walked away. I should have let Paris be a city where men walk and eat sandwiches facing the river and then fly home having learned nothing except that baguettes are still legal magic. Instead, because it was me, because I had been the finder of things my whole life, because I wanted to prove I was still good at it, I tried to handle. It clicked. Inside smelled like lemon and printer ink. It was a small place, a long room with a tall window and light that made you forgive everything. Books. A couch with a blanket thrown like a magazine photo. 2 coffee mugs that matched somehow without being a set. And on the far wall, a row of frames. This is how you learn the shape of your life by negative space. There were photos from my life on a wall that wasn't mine, with a man who wasn't me. Our dog, with a different hand on its head. Our backyard, minus the angle I take because I'm 6 feet tall and she is 5'6". Natalie at the beach last summer, hat crooked, that laugh that makes people forgive themselves. In the height of the frame, a man stood with his arm around her shoulders, nearer than a friend and in the easy way of someone who didn't have to start being near recently. He was not a movie villain. He was not beautiful. He looked like a guy who'd had good luck and some bad, with a smile he paid attention to. The kind of face you wouldn't notice in a crowd unless you loved him. The polite part of me, my mother's son, wanted to straighten one of the frames that tilted. My legs went watery. I sat on the arm of the couch because chairs felt like too much commitment. On the table, a bowl of keys. On the shelf, a copy of a book I'd given Natalie 2 Christmases ago, inscribed in my handwriting that I could recognize being mine even if someone else couldn't. The inscription made a terrible, ordinary kind of sense here, to the woman who makes everything brighter. I wanted to be a better version of myself in that room. I wanted to be dignified and philosophical and think big thoughts about desire and the illusions that keep marriages from being paperwork. Instead I felt my stomach twist like a knot you can undo. The word that came to me was small, oh. I left the way you leave a place where you don't belong. Quiet. Careful not to take anything that wasn't yours. The sun outside felt wrong, like it was shining on the wrong day. I walked until I hit the river. The water said nothing at a volume that made it feel like shouting. I didn't see her in Paris. The city did not give me that movie scene. Time did not slow and we did not fight on a cobblestone street while an accordion played. I flew home 8 pounds lighter in the face, 10 years heavier in the posture. They were all there when I walked in, the family summit you never want. Emma and Miles on the couch, their shoulders squared off in the way of kids who have practiced being brave in front of someone smaller. Natalie's parents, Judy and Hal, at the table with faces carved into new shapes. Judy has the soft voice that calmed our babies out of fevers. It was gone, replaced with nothing. Hal, a quiet man who likes fishing and dad jokes, sat with his hands flat on the surface like if he lifted them the table would fly away. Natalie stood near the archway between the kitchen and the living room, a careful distance from everyone that suggested she'd been moving and unable to find a place to stop. She had changed clothes since I left, different sweater, hair pulled back in a ponytail that telegraphed I mean business or don't ask me to cry. I took the second passport out of my bag and placed it on the table like a lid on a conversation. Judy flinched as if it might move. No one spoke for longer than it makes sense in a house where we spent 19 years narrating everything. Hal was the first to find his voice. He looked at the passport like a man looks at a tool he doesn't trust. "She didn't hide the lie from you," he said finally. His voice was low, a new register, like he had found it just for today. He looked at me, then at his daughter, then at Emma and Miles. She hid it from herself, that she picked the wrong man. He meant the other man, the one in the frames. I think my brain tried to make it mean me. It's confusing when the sentence that saves you looks like the sentence that kills you. Emma stood up. She is so much her mother's daughter it aches to look at her sometimes, the same angles, the same stubborn, the same way of tucking hair behind an ear when she is gathering strength. She didn't look at her mother. She looked at me, and the look said, "Tell me what happens now, because the person who told me the map has been using a different GPS." Miles, who still believes in the physics of fairness, said, "Are we leaving?" It wasn't a plea. It was logistics, the way he asks how many slices of pizza we ordered and whether he needs to split one with Emma. I nodded because my mouth felt like sand. "For now," I said. Natalie's face did a small thing you only catch because you love the person, a flinch, a ping of something like relief under the pain. It's hard to be the wrong you picked. Judy started to cry. She did it into her hands like a person who hates to be seen doing something necessary. Hal put an arm around her, awkward, solid, then looked at me again with the sorrow of a man who knows how to fix things and has found the thing that won't fix with a wrench. Natalie didn't speak. There was a version of the day in which she launched into the shape of her story, loneliness, attention, the trick of a second name making a second life feel less like a betrayal of the first. Maybe that was coming in some other hour. In this one, she pressed her lips together. Sometimes silence is an apology. Sometimes it is surrender. Sometimes it is an admission that there is no word left that doesn't dig the hole deeper. We packed. The packing was small and stupid: toothpaste, socks, 3 t-shirts, Emma's laptop, Miles's headphones, dog treats. The dog watched us with the usual canine 2 data point confusion: leashes, bags. Probably walk, probably sadness. Natalie stood aside as if she knew that moving would make us hit each other with elbows. She didn't ask where we were going. Her mother sobbed again. Hal stared out the window at our small front lawn like it was a landscape in a painting he might be expected to describe and couldn't. The passport sat on the table, too blue, too foreign, the kind of object that turns a kitchen into a courtroom. At the door, Emma paused. She turned to her mother. She didn't hug her, which is new, the not hugging, but she didn't glare, which would have been easier. "I don't know what to do with you right now," she said, 19-year-old words coming out of a 15-year-old mouth. "But I'm going to do it somewhere else." Miles did the merciful thing and said nothing. He put his hand in mine. We went to a hotel near the highway that pretends to be a resort if you squint. The room smelled like clean and something citrus. The kids took the beds, I took a chair and pretended it was what I wanted. Emma got in the shower and stayed in there long enough that the mirror turned aggressive. Miles watched a strange soccer game on a channel we didn't have at home, narrating bits to fill the silence. We ordered pizza and didn't eat it. I tried and failed to imagine what Natalie was doing in the house without us, sitting in the chair no one sits in because it's pretty, opening drawers and closing them again, counting the cups for something to do with her hands. Sometime around midnight, Natalie texted, "I'm sorry." 2 words that weighed 1,000 pounds and nothing. I stared at them until the screen dimmed. Another text, "I'll do whatever you need me to do." It was the right sentence and the wrong one. I put the phone face down and listened to my son's breathing change as he fell asleep and my daughter's restlessness as she tried and failed. In the morning, I drove to my parents' house in the next town over, the house I grew up in where the carpet still bears the outline of a couch from 1993. My mom said nothing brilliant, which is my favorite thing about her. She made pancakes and put out the good syrup. My dad took Miles to the hardware store because men in my family visit the hardware store like church. Emma sat at the kitchen table and turned her mug in circles. "Are you going to divorce her?" she asked, adolescence dealing in absolutes. "I don't know," I said. The honesty felt like an adult privilege you don't realize you have to earn until it's time to use it. "I know we're separating for now. I know you and Miles come first. I know your mom has to figure out why she chose a story that needed 2 names." Emma nodded like a judge who appreciated the succinctness of testimony. "I hate that Paris gets to keep our pictures," she said, and I almost laughed for the first time in 24 hours. We went back to the house 2 days later when we knew Natalie would be out. We packed more carefully, the things that matter when you might not be back soon, the box of baby photos, the good sheets, the stupid lamp I mocked when Natalie bought it and now couldn't imagine the room without. On the fridge, a magnetized whiteboard with our names divided into days. I wiped it clean and wrote nothing. Hal came by that afternoon. He didn't knock, just the small tap neighbors use. He carried a box of trash bags because that felt like the kind of thing he could carry. I was wrong, he said, sitting at the table where he'd said the line that had stuck in my ribs. I meant he was the wrong person for her to choose. I said it like a riddle. I'm sorry. You're not wrong, Ryan. You're just the one who stayed while she turned away, and that might be the cruelest job on earth. He put a hand on my shoulder, solid, not performative. My daughter is my daughter. But today, you're my son. I nodded because any other reaction would have let the dam break and I didn't want to drown Hal in my house. Lawyers came next, because that is what happens when a part of your life ends in a paperwork kind of way. There were words I had never used and now use daily: dissolution, custody schedule, property division. The second passport went into a manila folder for an attorney to look at and a judge to pretend not to notice. The bill for the apartment in Paris went back in the envelope, which went back in a drawer, because some evidence is just a way to keep hurting yourself. Emma made a list of what we were taking into our new place: townhouse, reasonable rent, a porch we could pretend was the yard. Miles asked if the dog could come. It wouldn't be home without him, I said, and meant both the dog and the kids. Natalie asked to see the kids alone. Emma said no, not for now. Miles said once a week, at the park, where he could leave if he wanted to, as if he were negotiating in a workplace. Natalie said okay. She never argued, which is the newest version of her I had to learn to live with: contrite, not combative. She started seeing a therapist a friend recommended, the kind who probably used words like authentic and boundaries, and I hoped it helped because I am not the man who wants her to be miserable forever. But hope is light, it doesn't rebuild houses. It was a quiet collapse, in the end. No police. No shouting in the front yard. Just the slow scraping sound of a life rearranging itself into two shapes. In the townhouse, the kids hung the same photos on different walls. Emma insisted on the ugly lamp. Miles insisted on bed placement that made no sense but made him sleep. I bought a set of mugs that matched on purpose because the Paris ones had matched by accident. We learned the new metronome, the dog snoring in a different corner, the hum of a refrigerator with more frozen pizza than vegetables, the silence of a house that wasn't trying to pretend we were okay. One night in August, after the move, after the emails with the subject lines that make you feel like you're paying taxes with your heart, Natalie came by to drop off a box of books. The kids were at my parents' for the evening. She stood in the doorway like someone who forgot a word in a language she used to speak. "Your dad," she said, meaning Hal, told me what he said. He told me he was sorry. She held the box like a shield. I am too. Sorry. I don't know what to do with the person I was. You could try not being her anymore, I said, and I meant it without meanness. For you, not for me. She nodded. You were always the finder, she said, small smile, the way she says things that are almost jokes and almost love. I got lost and found a way to pretend I wasn't. She looked around at the townhouse. It looks good. It looks like you. It did. Not perfect, not magazine. Just bright where it could be and functional where it needed to be. She set the box down and left without asking to come in the rest of the way. It was the kindest thing she could do. Months later, I still think about the wall in the Paris apartment. I imagine the day the frames came down. Maybe they stayed, a museum of a lie that was real while it was happening, which is the worst kind. Maybe he replaced them with photos that made more sense. Maybe a new person lives there now, with a new bowl of keys and no idea what they inherited besides good light. Emma sometimes asks if I will ever go back to Paris. Miles says he wants to prove we can have the city without the story. I tell them the truth, I don't know. For now, we go to the river in our own town and throw bread at ducks and pretend it's chic. We eat baguettes that came out of a grocery bakery and call them fancy. We make plans we might not keep, like people do when they are learning to love without lies. You ask if I can still find things. I can. Keys. The right size bolt. The lid for the Tupperware we keep losing because no one wants to admit we use Tupperware. I can also find silence at the right times, and that turns out to be the more useful skill. When Miles misses his mom and pretends he doesn't. When Emma sits on the counter and says she hates new traditions and then says this is nice. When my phone buzzes and the message says I'm sorry again, a sentence that keeps being true and not enough. Sometimes late at night, I think of Hal's words. She hid it from herself, that she picked the wrong man. It's a line that shifts when you look at it. Wrong man, wrong woman. Wrong life. Or maybe just a wrong version of herself, briefly powerful with a second name and a second key. People do that. They try on somebody else and forget how to come back. Some do. Some don't. We keep the beat. We show up for each other with pizza and science fair glue and the dog needing to go out at 2 a.m. When it's hard, I remind myself, I am a stair. Not with a person who won't stand still, not anymore. With my kids. With the house that hums. With the version of me that doesn't need a passport to know where he belongs. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.